Hi, this is Tammy Katz. This is the Requirements Working Group meeting for February. Thank you for those that have joined, and I know we have a few more that will be joining as we go through. Today is really about a discussion on how the IW 2023 event played out, what we've learned from there, some takeaways, and some next steps. I'm going to start us off here by just first of all thanking those of you who were able to participate. But if you were not able to participate, I'm going to let you know where you can find all the content, because the Requirements Working Group was quite active right before the IW and even during it. We had a couple of sessions. All right, for those of you who have not seen this yet, we have a new and improved Requirements Working Group external site. You are welcome to get this from my emails. I try to link to it. We have a link on our YouTube channel. Additionally, you can navigate there from the INCOSE homepage by going to the Technical Operations and Working Groups page. We have on here intent to keep up with what our meetings are. So this announcement right below the main intro to our working group is for today's event. As we start queuing up our monthly meetings, we'll keep this on our external page along with a link where people can register. So in addition to the emails myself or Lou will be sending out to notify our members of meetings, you can also check the site and you can see what we have upcoming. We do also have a link to an email address where you can reach any of us. If you have ideas for presentation topics or just general thoughts, you're welcome to use this email address. You are also welcome to use the Yammer page. And if you're an INCOSE member, you might have seen the Yammer page where we have a requirements working group site, and we do have various questions and answers and discussions that occur. Consider it social media for the INCOSE community, and this happens to be the requirements working group community. So we will also post announcements on here about our upcoming events and activities. You might have noticed, if you've gotten on this distribution, we posted a request for feedback on the guide to writing requirements. We're going to discuss that a little later today, but these are the types of things we'll also be putting on our Yammer page and our email. And in addition to this external site, we have a members only site. So anyone in the public can see this working group site. Only members can access the iNet, which is an intranet. So if you go on here, if you're not already logged in with your INCOSE account, you'll get to a login screen, log in with your regular INCOSE account, and then you'll be on our iNet page. It's going to be somewhat similar to the external page. And you'll see a little bit more with links to how to reach the direct chair and co-chairs. You'll also see population of links to pages on some of our past major events. And right now, the only page populated is the IW 2023 page, which I'll take you to in a minute. But we'll be bringing over stuff from our archives from our old Connect site into this location. One of the reasons you're here, though, is this is also where we'll post drafts of material. So if you are interested in looking at the latest draft version of the Guide to Writing Requirement, the new one we're working on, version 4, we do have a post here, and we also have a link to the comment form you can download and apply comments. So it's right here at the very top. We also have links, and we'll be providing more on past presentations we've done, past videos. Perhaps we'll link some of that, but we also have a link to our YouTube channel. Now, if you were to also want to see our IW page, it's linked here. This is also members only site. It's just a separate page where we devote all content to what we went over at IW 2023. And what we'd like to highlight is we had a series of very successful activities. First of all, great turnout for folks in the room and hybrid. We're very happy for the folks that attended the session. You see here me holding 2 awards. Our working group was the recipient of 2 honors at the IW. We won Product of the Year for the Needs and Requirements Manual and the associated guides. And that was just several years of hard effort. And we're very happy for that recognition. And we'll continue on that great work in maturing those products. We also won an outreach award for our working group. And that was a really nice honor. That was really acknowledging the work we're doing, holding meetings like this, our various meetings with different chapters. We definitely get the word out. We try to answer questions. We have our Yammer site. We try to have continual dialogue. So we're always working to bring this material out to others. So we're very happy to have received that outreach award. What we've also done for the second time is have a pre-event, and I'm going to highlight a little bit about that. and some of the takeaways and where you can find that information. And then Lou's going to take over and he's going to talk a little bit about the 2-day event or the 2 half-day events we had at IW, what we talked about, highlights of those conversations. Now, this just isn't a singular presentation. I really appreciate those of you that call in and you want to stay informed, but this is also an opportunity to ask us questions, particularly when we get to the material we're working on and what we discussed at IW. We're interested in folks telling us about their insights. What did you learn if you were at those events? What were your takeaways? What would you have wanted to see different? We're certainly wanting to hear your feedback. So now I just want to take a moment before I get into the pre-IW and show you our YouTube channel. We're very happy. This is, I think, our second, maybe almost our third year holding this YouTube channel. We definitely realize there's a lot of material on there. And so we've set things up into playlists. And so if you want to go on this YouTube channel, hop onto YouTube, search for Cozy RWG. This page will pop up. Definitely hit the subscribe button. You can get an opportunity to see when things get added. Again, we've got playlists, and on here, the first playlist we show is our IW 2023 playlist. So all the information I'm sharing with you about our pre-IW sessions and our IW sessions, you'll be able to find on that playlist. Additionally, you'll notice we have a cool new logo thanks to Cozy Marcom, so we're very happy about that. We're trying to make sure we keep our affiliation and brand associated with Cozy. So everything on here, we work in partnership with the Cozy Marcom team, and they help also publish and make aware of this material. We do have also playlists on other types of topics. So if you're very interested in a particular aspect, we try to keep information on here so you can find it. But do feel free to use the search feature. Last year and this year, we held a couple-day event prior to the IW. It's an opportunity to bring in some of our members to talk to others. We're very appreciative of those that take the time to share the work they have in progress, maybe tools they're using, maybe a tool vendor wants to share capabilities within a tool. We certainly love to hear the experiences of our members, and we like to learn from each other. So this monthly meeting enables that, but the pre-IW event is really where we do a big concentrated effort of topics. So what's shared on the screen right now is the agenda from that pre-IW set of sessions. Other than just giving a general debrief on how 2023 worked out for our requirements working group, we had an amazing presentation on standards and regulations and how you can manage those with your requirement set to enable the ability to show compliance, particularly if you're in a highly regulated field. But even if you're in a field that just deals with a few standards, it's very useful guidance that Lou had put together. And you'll find that video on the YouTube site, and on the IW page for members, you'll see all of the material that was presented. So all of the slides are here as well. Following Lou was Carrie Brychek from JAMA, and she showed how you could apply standards and regulations in with your requirement set in a requirements management tool. So the logistics behind how that could all work were demonstrated in that particular tool suite. And then we did have an open discussion. And in that open discussion, it really queued up a lot of interesting, I would say, questions or topics that folks might be interested in exploring further. And what we've done with that, and the video is on YouTube as well, but what we've done with that is start to develop ideas for monthly presentations. Folks that are very curious about how to model requirements, how to address requirement standards in modeling constructs, and how that could work in practical applications, and how you can derive requirements through models. So there's a couple of different approaches there that are very interesting to people. So some of these discussion topics we're going to invite folks to talk at future requirement working group sessions about. The open discussion on requirement topic was really just a free form question and answer. And that's kind of what today can be as well. We're going to guide you a little bit about these topics, but I don't want to necessarily limit to me. If anybody else wanted to comment on the IW events or ask questions on these, I'm checking the chat. Bob, was your question answered Are there any incentives for people to become members to access information not available to everybody? You're right. That's great. I showed you public information in our YouTube channels, but you'll notice the slide content isn't there. The slides are only available on the iNet. You might notice that members get access early versions of the Guide to Writing Requirements, and they can comment on it. And that is something that, we're welcome non-members to comment, and sometimes we will partner with very particular individuals and give them access to that material, but we don't freely make it available on our public page. Those are by exception. Really, it's the members will get access to that early material and enable them to comment on it and provide us feedback, and they'll get the slides and the materials from our various presentations. Okay, let's talk about day 2 of the pre-IW event. There was a lot of great information on there. Carlo Liardi was very kind to present to the requirements working group his experiences in working the quantitative aspects of requirements. And he walked through a series of examples that I thought were very useful. So I do recommend folks take a look at that on our IW 2023 playlist. We had Ailis Yusufi. I'm sorry, I'm going to say that wrong. I apologize for that, but a member of the Reuse Company. He talked a lot about project data dictionaries and how that can align with how we can apply the Guide to Writing Requirements in terms of common nomenclature and common methods of approach. We did have Henrik Matfolk talk about configuration management across the digital thread for variants in particular. He gave a very interesting set of considerations and examples for addressing that. And then collaboration and needs and requirements development. I thought Raymond Wolfgang did a great job talking about some of the challenges you might have when you're trying to elicit your needs, when you're trying to work with your stakeholders, and some different strategies on how you can bring out some of those communication and collaboration skills. Those are things that are not always intuitive for everybody. So I really appreciate Raymond bringing that perspective. We now have 25 folks on the line.
Tammy, one comment I have is the whole concept of having a pre-IW session was so important because in the past, these are presentations that we would have done at IW, and a lot of people would focus most of their IW on the RWG. But by having these beforehand, it gives people the opportunity to broaden their horizons, attend other events, participate in other working groups at IW. And also I want to point out that, Tech Ops really likes this example, and they sent out a notification to other working groups, encouraging them to follow this example as well, so that other working groups in the future will have maybe some pre-IW events focused just on the working group and then be able to free up people to do other things. And a big thing at IW this year was the Future of System Engineering Fuse. There's a lot of dedicated sessions just on it that wouldn't really be possible if we were focused just on working group things at IW.
Great points, Lou. And in fact, when we got to IW, we did have 2 half-day sessions, but Lou and myself and some of the other members also took time to attend the workshops that were held. The Future of System Engineering effort is actively ongoing right now. It's an effort to try to realize the Vision 2035. And there are a series of streams that they held where they had concurrent workshops running. So a few of us attended some of the different ones. I attended the methodologies workshop where they talk about what are some of the barriers and disruptors towards achieving tools and processes, improvements and capabilities that enable us to go towards that vision. In those workshops, they had a very active set of sessions. It was brainstorming. It was folks from all over the NCOSE community coming together with their ideas. And from that, then they brainstormed ways around those disruptors, some ideas that we could put in place. And what happens to that information? That actually then gets aligned with the technical operations team, where working groups will have an opportunity to figure out how they can affect improvement in those areas, how they can adopt some of their solutions towards some of those ideas. So it's an input, essentially a stakeholder needs elicitation effort to help gather what focus areas should the working groups do so that they are working to achieve the Vision 2035. There are other ways that working groups get inputs. One is through the Corporate Advisory Board, who puts together a set of needs from an industry perspective. those needs may or may not be aligned with Vision 2035. So now we have an opportunity to just do a cross check. Some of the activities the working groups are doing and the fuse efforts and the ideas in the Vision 2035, it's just a way to keep us all aligned. So we're working towards common goals. The workshops themselves were open to anyone attending the IW. Most of them were in person, but they are planning on having a set of virtual ones for those who were not able to attend IW. So if you're an NCOSY member and you hear about some of these, it's a really great opportunity to participate and affect the direction of some of these NCOSY working groups and volunteers. In terms of what else we got out of IW, some of us decided also to meet with other working groups. So we had collaboration opportunities. And it's not necessarily reflected here, but a couple of the meetings we had were with two working groups, one with quality management, the SEQM working group, where we talked about how we could bring some of the Quality Management Institute principles into some of the needs and requirements development and verification processes. And then in terms of the other one, I think was system security working group. There was an opportunity there that I'm going to let Lou expand on since he was present at that meeting. But the idea here is we're trying to work with other working groups, not just within our own, so that we can reach across where there's common domain and requirement working group interests. We could either write guidelines, we can generate white papers, we might even just infuse some additional content into the next rev of our products. We also had an opportunity to just have general working group to working group coordination discussions that I would attend that enabled us to be better integrated holistically across all the working groups. This is something I hadn't seen a focus on in the last several years, and it was always a curious factor of why are the working groups stovepiped, but they're working to improve that. And technical operations is making very purposeful efforts to try and align a lot of the working groups that have, I say, common areas and make sure we work together more frequently. So I spent some time at the IW working in that area as well. Now, Lou was kind enough to lead the requirement working group sessions at the IW, and Mike Ryan also called in from a hybrid viewpoint and helped us with a lot of those sessions. So at this point, what I'd like to do is turn this over to Lou and let him share a little bit about how IW went for our working group and what our big takeaways are and what our next steps are.
One thing about collaboration, we learned a lot and already in the past year with the System Security Engineering Working Group. Those sessions are on our YouTube channel, and if you haven't listened to them or you weren't present, I highly recommend you do that. One of the things that their working group is working on is they're going to develop a short decoder ring kind of document that links some of the system security standards to the needs and requirements manual. And I say decoder ring because some of the terminology that we use and some of the terminology they use is different, but they have the same meanings. And so they're going to have to do that. Another thing that really intrigued me is that there's a big increasing focus on capability engineering, where you look at the bigger picture rather than just a engineered system. It's the people, processes, and the products from a capability standpoint. And so they're going to develop a short guide that is in line with the needs and requirements manual and the guide to needs and requirements. It starts out upfront with elicitation, but they've defined this thing called misuse cases and loss scenarios, and then developing lifecycle concepts. And I mean lifecycle, you have to address security across the lifecycle to address those cases and then define what capabilities the system needs to have to address those issues, define within the integrated set of needs, the need for those capabilities. And then a key thing is getting stakeholder alignment and agreement on those capabilities, because a lot of those capabilities don't come for free. And there's expectations that the stakeholders have for those. So when the customer, if you will, whoever's funding the program, they have to agree on that integrated set of needs. And doing so, they're agreeing that the developers can spend the time and resources necessary to implement those capabilities. With that integrated set of needs approved, then we can transform those into a set of design input requirements, and that they emphasize functional requirements that result in those capabilities being met that will address the security issues. And we're finding more and more that while they're focusing on security, that applies to resiliency, it applies to sustainability, a lot of the other abilities, safety, a lot of times is put in there, a lot that we're learning from that. And so I'm really looking forward to several of the products that they're putting out in that area.
Hey, Lou, just one sec. Have you
Yes,
had an opportunity to see the chat while you've been talking? We had an interesting question from Jeffrey about
Thank
the
you.
term needs. And so, Jeffrey, it's very interesting you asked that. Lou just described a little bit about the integrated set of needs. My question for you, just to help ground us, is have you had an opportunity to look at any of the recent products from our working group, either the Needs and Requirements Manual or the Guide to Needs and Requirements?
I've looked at both of those. I haven't gone into them in great detail. I think the devil's in the details when you start actually working with examples of real requirements and trying to harmonize them. I think that's where the real challenges are. Some of the discussions around needs tend to wander into the, well, is it required or is it a need? And I think we get caught up in a little bit in the semantics. This is an attempt to reduce the amount of bias and also to reduce some of the ambiguity.
And I know that Lou has had a few presentations devoted entirely to the topic of generating the integrated set of needs and then transforming them into requirements and what the difference is between the two. And I'm not sure we can spend the whole time here talking about it, but Lou, if you see Jeffrey's note in the chat, I was wondering if you just had some basic comments on that. And then we had one other comment on somebody interested in working with the security effort as well.
we have to understand the context of a lot of words that we use. We see when we talk about requirements, there's all different kinds of requirements, and people throw out the word requirements often without stating what the context is. And we've seen the same with verification validation. The same is true when we talk about needs. So if you put them in context, in some cases, you could talk about stakeholder needs, stakeholder requirements that are defined in 29148, and then also 15288, the lifecycle processes, is one called stakeholder needs and requirements. We consider those inputs at the system level into a project's efforts to develop a capability system. Along with that, inputs, we have drivers constraints, we talk about risk, and then we go through and define a set of lifecycle concepts that will address those. Because there's a lot of different stakeholders that have needs, there's going to be a lot of conflicts, there's going to be inconsistencies, they're often not complete. And so one of the project team's goals is to resolve all those issues, develop a set of lifecycle concepts that are complete, consistent, correct, feasible, and then define what capabilities the system needs to address those lifecycle concepts, document those into the integrated set of needs. So the integrated set of needs is a whole different thing than what a lot of people talk about just by needs. Even though the needs don't have a shell statement, the set of needs is invoked on the project by business management. And business management says, this is the scope of our project. These are the needs that you need to address. In order for us to accept your system, we're going to validate you've met our needs. Those are well-formed, complete, consistent, correct, feasible. And then we transform those into a set of design input requirements that are from the view of the system of what it has to do to meet the needs. Whereas the needs are the view of the stakeholders, especially the customers that are going to pay for it, what they need the system to do for them to address a problem or opportunity. So this is a good segue into our two sessions. The first session that we had on Sunday, we went through a lot of these concepts, what I just talked about. That particular presentation is on our YouTube channel now. You could look at that and you'll get a lot more of the details. Also, for members, all of that information, that presentation is also included in the draft guide to writing requirements. Let me stop and ask Jeffrey, do you have any other comments or comments on what I just said?
No, all of that's very familiar territory. I think there's an opportunity for further conversation. Obviously, I'm mostly in listening mode. This is the first time I'm kind of participating. So I'm happy to listen more and find opportunities where we can engage.
And Jeffrey, we're always willing to hear thoughts. If people review our material, the Needs and Requirements Manual, you said you've browsed through, or any the guides. If anything in there doesn't resonate with you, if you somehow think it's not clear or is contrary to stuff you've dealt with, we love to hear that. We also want to understand if maybe we're just talking different terms for, concepts. So we're always willing to take input and feel free. You've seen our email address and we're happy to have other conversations or see comment forms filled out against our material.
And Jeffrey, what does the JTBD stand for?
Oh, I'm sorry. The acronym, jobs to be done. It's something that I put in place from years ago, doing some work with Clayton Christensen, who did a lot of that pioneering work.
I thought that might be what that meant. One of my clients sent me a link to your website. When I was reading through it, like Tammy said, I think conceptually we're very much in alignment. We just have maybe slightly different terms for what it is, but the overall approach is basically the same as far as I could tell.
Yeah.
If you could put a link to your website, I would advise people that they can read what that position is. The whole concept of jobs to be done is a really neat perspective. I think a lot of people could benefit from.
Sure. Happy to do so.
Thank you.
Lou, I don't know if you have any other comments. We had a couple more chats. Bruno had a question, and I think, Engel, are we looking for support in developing some of our domain-specific guides and security? Maybe that's something you can reach out offline, but we'd like to see your input on, are these artifacts integrated to needs and design input requirements part of the SE Handbook 5? Actually, we're going to keep nomenclature a little different perhaps. So maybe Lou, you want to comment on how the version 5 material and the needs and requirements manual, how that nomenclature plays together.
In version 5 of the System Engineering Handbook, Mike and I and Tammy and Raymond were involved in the developing of those sections that deal with needs and requirements, as well as verification, validation, interface management, traceability. It was neat that those were being developed concurrently with our products. 15288 defines the main technical processes. Within that is a set of activities. For each technical process, we were only allowed like 2.5, 3 pages at the most to talk about that. And half of that dictated by the structure of 15288. And so they go through basic activities, but they really don't give enough information for a practitioner to actually go in there and do the work. And so each of those sections refer to the needs and requirements manual and our guides for further elaboration. Like in section 4 of our needs and requirements manual, we're not defining processes, we're finding more details on the actual activities. And so there's a good connection there. They don't mention an integrated set of needs. They don't mention design input requirements. We explain the design input requirements are the system requirements that are output of the system requirements definition process. And really a lot of our activities in section 4, when you define the stakeholder needs and requirements as defined in 15288 in the System Engineering Handbook, there isn't a whole lot of detail how you transform those into the set of system requirements. So a lot of what we're doing in our products is giving people the details for that transformation. As part of that transformation, we're introducing a few new artifact names that we've found that make sense. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Lou. And I hope, Bruno, that addressed your question. Craig said Yammer is a great place to go deeper into some of these topics. We have some great discussions in the requirements working group Yammer space. Thank you, Craig. I absolutely appreciate that. We are trained to keep that site current and active and keep the conversations going. So really nice of you to point people to that. David said we've recently started a practice of using assumption mapping to assist both in prioritization of initial feasibility testing, as well as establishing initial user needs. Has the team considered including assumptions or assumption mapping as a common practice tool method to discover needs requirement or assist in internal trade studies prioritization? That's a very interesting one. Have you heard of that, Lou?
I haven't heard about the mapping. I have given advice that people up front, whenever they're doing anything, they should always write down their assumptions, because a lot of the work are based on assumptions. And if you don't document and write down the assumptions, then you're assuming that everyone knows what you're assuming, which is a bad assumption. I include that in the needs and requirements manual for people to document their assumptions, but the concept of assumption mapping, I'm not familiar with.
We're not DoD. We're kind of a commercial lab equipment company. And so we've been using it to help prioritize initial feasibility, because a lot of what we're doing is taking manual processes and automating them. And so it's questions like, okay, can we mix this way? Can we mix materials in a different mechanism? Some of those initial assumptions we're prioritizing by, okay, how fast can we get an answer to this question? And then how much is it going to cost to get that answer before we even start with requirements development or full product development? And maybe it's a little unique to our area of development, but I just was wondering if anyone else had used tools like that. So we use a mural board template so we can all collaborate on it. But you basically throw everything against the wall in sticky notes, and then you sort it by, okay, is this a known question or an unknown? And then what's the impact of whether it's known or unknown? And then you do a second sort on, okay, how quick could we discover the answer to this?
For both you and Jeffrey, one of the things, like Tammy said, in our monthly meetings, we like to share ideas. If both of you would like to give a short presentation and then followed by a Q&A on particular topics, let us know and we can work that into an agenda. If we can't fit it into the set of monthly meetings, we can also include those topics in our pre-IW 2024 days as well.
For sure.
That would be a great source because we want to learn new things and how it allows us to do our jobs better. And I don't know how many people are familiar with the mural board. It's an online sticky note that allows collaboration with people virtually. One of my clients introduced me to that. So people aren't familiar with that. You could show them that also.
We do find people love to see examples and demonstration of methods. So yeah, both of you presenting ideas on how to generate needs or even just work through some various ideas at the very beginning. It would be great to see demonstrations of those. Okay, I think we've gotten through the chat. Thank you, everybody, by the way. I really appreciate the interaction we're getting here. Lou, as far as some of the takeaways from IW and some of our next steps, I've brought up the material here. I don't know if you want to point anybody to any particular aspect of this, but I turn this back over to you to continue on talking about what we did on day 2, I think.
One thing about Yammer, the presentation I gave on standards and regulations compliance actually was an outgrowth of a Yammer discussion that we had. The person put the stuff on Yammer. She first sent me an email directly, and then I advised her to put it on Yammer, and then we got a lot of interaction by different people on that. And as an outgrowth of that, I put together that presentation. One problem we had with the environment, we had frequent dropouts. There was some bandwidth issues at IW. And also the room we were in, there was a room next door with just a thin divider between us. And so when you're listening to these recordings, you're going to hear a lot of background noise that normally wouldn't exist. So just a word of caution. The recordings are still very valuable. It's always been nice for IW is this place for members to get together and have discussions. And so for both days, I would say that more than half of what you hear is a discussion amongst people that were participating, both in person and virtually, versus just what I was presenting. And so we had a lot of really good interaction. And I found that as I was going through and editing those presentations, it kind of jogged me about some suggestions for updates to the guide to writing requirements. And so I actually went in and made some of those changes. Mike made some of those changes. So the new draft version that Tammy posted reflects a lot of the comments that we got during IW. Not everything, but there's a lot of things. And then also in real time, as I hear something, as I'm going through and editing, if we didn't cover it in the draft, we have another working copy that Mike and I are working on. And I went in and included those red lines in that copy, and then we'll add you all's review comments to that working copy, and we'll have another outgrowth of that. But the session, like I said, on day 1, focused on the upfront part, introductions and basic concepts. And then day 2, the focus was on characteristics. A lot of people, when they look at the guide to writing requirements, they seem to focus on the rules that are defined that you can follow, like avoid ambiguous terms, and there's 42 rules, and a lot of tool vendors focus on the rules. But to me, it's really important that we don't lose sight of the characteristics that we're trying to achieve by following the rules and also the fact that those characteristics, a lot of them are dependent upon the activities that we define in our other guides. The focus of those presentations on that Monday was on the characteristics. Section 2 deals with characteristics of well-formed individual need statements and requirement statements. And then section 3, which we covered after the break, focuses on characteristics of sets of well-formed needs and sets of well-formed requirements. And again, whenever I use the word needs in our titles or anything, I'm talking about the integrated set of needs that we define. I'm not talking about stakeholder needs or stakeholder requirements, just to make sure you understand the context of how we're using the word needs in that case. So we had a lot of good interactions, what you would like to see in an IW. It was just a structured set of interactions based on the material being presented. And I'm just finished today going through the presentation on section 2. And so when this is finished, I'll get those videos processed and posted on the YouTube channel. Section 3 is a shorter session, and I'll go through and edit it. And within the next week, it'll be posted as well. Mike, do you want to go in and talk about some key points from those discussions, and also what we're doing with the guide and its current status and what the future plans are?
We had a lot of socialization of those concepts, and I think they've been crystallized. Well, we're comfortable with them, I guess, and I think most people are as well. So the version of the guide that Tammy's very kindly just sent out and called for comment is pretty mature in those first early sections. And so I think the good thing about IW for me was we sort of went around that buoy a couple of times and were comfortable with the broad structure. And I think we've got a pretty complete set of characteristics, a complete start point, if you like. And then we've got the rules. We added a couple of rules, fine-tuned a couple of rules, and we've done a fair bit of work in elaboration of the rules, exceptions to the rules, etc. But you'll see in the guide, the next significant piece of work is to be more clear about the application of the rule, in particular looking for where there might be exceptions to the rule. And then we're keen on being careful about writing examples of how a rule would be applied to a requirement in order to make it better. It's always been a slightly difficult task, because if a requirement has a number of things wrong with it, it's actually quite difficult to explain how to fix it. So we've sort of settled into an idea that we're looking for examples which have an atomic single error, if you like, and then show how the rule would address that error. And then we might build up to more elaborate examples later on. But that probably wouldn't be in the guide. It would probably be in some sort of supporting, tutorial type stuff. The other thing that we're doing in the guide, the other piece of work which is still coming, you'll see in the next version, version 4, is Appendix C, which is to focus on the use of patterns as it relates to requirements. We have in there already the idea of patterns in terms of conditions, conditional phrases, a statement, and then qualifying phrases or clauses. But there's a lot of work done on patterns. And so we're trying to coalesce all of that into Appendix C. But I think you'll see, if you look at the current version that was just put out, it's quite a significant improvement on the previous version, version 3.1. Well, I think that's where we're headed. That's the major activity in the next revision, if you like, of the guide.
If I remember right, the due date for comments is the middle of March.
14th of March. Take them as soon as you've got them, so don't wait till the 14th of March. But we would really prefer that you provide the comments in the comment form. That gives it some structure. What we would like you to do is provide your comments in that structure. In other words, point to the bit that you think needs to be fixed, what the current bit says, and then what you think the revised bit should be. But we can't really cope with comments that say, oh, I don't agree with needs. Oh, okay, so what do we do with that? So any comments, if you could make them specific, please, and in particular, tell us what you think the revised structure should be, text should be, or whatever. I mean, give us some editing guidance, not just say that you disagree with it or you don't like it or whatever. I mean, they're valid comments, but you can't expect us to do much with that except to try and see how we might put that flavour through. If you'd like something to address specifically, please tell us how to do that.
And another advantage of using that form is that it allows us to take each comment individually, but also it allows us to give you feedback on how we've addressed each of your comments and why we've done what we've done in addressing those comments. what we've done in the past. Everyone that supplies comments will be included in the reviewer list in the front of the guide when it's published. And also Mike sends out that feedback to each person. So here's the comments you gave us, and this is what we did with each individual comment. So you get that feedback, and you also get credit for the time and effort you've put into reviewing this.
Okay, Lou, I know that we wanted to leave a little time to talk about our next update to the Needs Requirements Manual, and I personally want to put out a request to folks in general. We put out a lot of material out there as a first cut, and we get a lot of great feedback as we're working the material, but really nothing is more beneficial than those who put it in use. Try it, put it on a project, see how it works for you, and then feed us back areas you think could be improved. And particularly, as Mike said, if you have proposed text or areas you think may be inaccurate and a different way you want to see it approached, that's really good feedback. And we're generally going to want to improve these products over and over again as more people use them. With that being said, Lou, why don't you share just the general approach towards the next update on the Needs and Requirements Manual?
Yeah, our focus right now is on the guided writing requirements and also some other commitments that I've made. I'm not going to be able to start doing a whole lot of work until June, but a lot of what we've done, especially in section 1 of the guide to writing requirements, is going to need feedback into the needs and requirements manual, especially, section 1. And then I've gotten some feedback over the last year. So I have kind of working copy. I have 2 individuals that have volunteered to go through the manual. It's so long, it's going to take time for people to do it. So I have several people that are going through it section at a time and providing inputs. So it's going to take quite a bit of the month of June and probably part of July to get all the comments in that I already have. And then the plan is then to put it out for review. And the Needs and Requirements Manual, Wiley wants to publish it. And so, and Kelsey has a contract with Wiley. So we're working out the details of that. It's going to be quite a bit of work. And so we're going to have to discuss how we're going to tackle all that information. But eventually, the Needs and Requirements Manual will be published by Wiley. In the meantime, if you have any specific areas that you have some general comments and suggestions for improvement, go ahead and send them to me and I'll address those in the next update. I need to take the version 1.1 and do an update to it to maybe 1.2 and then put that out for review. Anything that y'all send me between now and June, I'll include in that update.
I was going to say, Lou, should we post that on here under this section? Maybe your current draft and a comment form similar to enable our teams to just generally have a look and provide comments much similar to what we just asked for in the guide?
Yes, we can do that. Kind of an informal review. So I don't know that they have to be as formal in the comments, but some announcement on here. We are planning to do that update to version 2. Whatever the form is, if they just send me their comments, that would be fine for right now. And when I send it out for official review, then I want them to use the comment form.
Thank you. I just missed this in the chat and I apologize, Carlo, but you said the next AISE VVO workshop shall regard applying the guides and our Needs and Requirements Manual, starting from real cases and matching day-to-day issues with guidelines, insights, and inspiration. And does that make sense? Are you asking for our thoughts on your topic, or are you asking for general help on that? What was your thoughts there, Carlo?
No, simply if the idea makes sense. The idea is to put in practice the guidelines, stating one case or couple of cases with obviously system engineering practitioners of our working group, and not necessarily only for our working group, that is the verification, validation, and operations working group. And starting from the real cases, checking in the guidelines what is written and matching what is reality, what we are affording in reality, and seeing if we can benefit as expected, and what are the limits eventually of if life is too hard sometimes.
Carlo, that was exactly right. We just asked for that, right? Could you please apply these and maybe example cases and real world scenarios will be equivalent. We would love to see that in practice. And it also helps us improve as you find areas that aren't as robust as they could be.
So the writing requirements, the writing guidelines and publishing them is fantastic. And it's also very nice and very interesting being part of the review, but applying them, I think, is the target, correct?
Yeah, I really love the idea. It's great. And while you mentioned that also, in April, we're going to have a session. And for what group is it, Tammy?
Is that EMEA? Are we talking EMEA?
Yeah, the EMEA event.
So we've been invited to participate in that, and we're putting together a 90-minute workshop on applying what's in the guide needs requirements, and also what we learned from the system security engineering working group to the concept of sustainability. I think it's going to really be kind of a fun session. I'm going to be submitting the proposal for that, within the next few days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're coming up at time. So I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. We had a great turnout, and I really appreciate that. Maybe you want to present something, or maybe you want to have a discussion on a particular topic you're struggling with. Please send that to us at requirements-leaders@ncozy.net, and we're happy to start queuing up our next set of monthly meetings to include those items. And again, if you're going to EMEA, look for us. We're going to have a workshop there. Lou and I will be virtual, but we will have some members there helping to host it on site. With that being said, any last minute words, Lou and Mike?
No, I thought it was a really good session.
No, all good.
All right. Thank you, everybody.